anything? You okay?
Nope, I think I'm good. Just need a second to collect myself here. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. I think you Good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the first meeting of 2023. I hope everyone had a safe, healthy, and happy New Year. This evening is our Board of Education reorganization meeting, and typically Dr. Russo, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, would be presiding over tonight's meeting, at least the beginning of the meeting. He's unable to be here tonight, so our Assistant Board Secretary and District Comptroller, Bonnie Cheney, is going to run the beginning of the meeting. There's a reorganization portion of the meeting, so I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie for that.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District Board of Education. In accordance with the state sunshine law, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending a notice of the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting on January 10th, 2022 and December 22nd, 2022 to the Home News Tribune and the Times. Posted on the district website, placed in the board office and in each of the district schools, and sent to the Plainsboro and West Windsor Public Libraries and Plainsboro and West Windsor Township clerks. Again, this is the reorganization meeting of the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District for the period January 2023 through January 2024. And again, in accordance with the state sunshine law, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by sending a notice of the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting to the Home News Tribune, the Times, the West Windsor and Plainsboro Public Libraries, and copies of this notice also have been posted in the board office, filed with the Plainsboro and West Windsor Township clerks, and placed in each of our schools and posted on the district website. Now I'll just relay the results of the November 8th, 2022 election. There were 2 3-year terms available in West Windsor, to which Louisa Ho and Graylin McKeown were elected. Congratulations, Louisa and Graylin. There was 1 1-year term available in West Windsor, to which Shweta Shetty was elected. Congratulations. And there was 1 3-year term available in Plainsboro, to which Robin Zovich was elected. Congratulations, Robin. Okay, so we'll move on to the administration of the oaths of office. And I would normally start with Louisa, but she is out today. So, Graylin, we can start with you. If you could raise your right hand and read your oath of office.
Thanks, Bonnie. I, Graylin McKeown, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Graylin McKeown, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in New Jersey Statute 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you, Graylin, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Next, Shweta, if you could raise your right hand and take the oath.
I, Shweta Shetty, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Shweta Shetty, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Thank you, Shweta, and again, congratulations. And Robin, if you could raise your right hand and read the oath of office.
I, Robin Zovich, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I, Robin Zovich, do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19-4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A 12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
And if I could ask that each of you sign your oath. And then we'll move on to nomination for president of the board. So could I have a nomination for president of the Board of Education? Dana?
I nominate Rachel Juliana.
Okay. Second? Liz? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. So if I could ask that in front of you, there's a white slip of paper. If you could just write down your choice for president of the Board of Education and pass it over to me. It should have came with your packet. There was a blue piece and a white piece of paper. If you don't have it, you can just write it on a piece of paper and send it to me. Yeah. Okay. So first I have Elizabeth votes for Rachel Juliana for president. Shweta Shetty votes for Rachel Juliana for president. Robin Zovich votes for Rachel Juliana for president. Graylin McEwen votes for Rachel Juliana for president. Dana Krug votes for Rachel Juliana for president. Pooja Bansal votes for Rachel Juliana for president. And Rachel Juliana votes for Rachel Juliana for president. And Loy Maliga votes for Rachel Juliana for president. So Rachel Juliana is president of the Board of Education. Congratulations. And I will switch seats with you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I just wanted to say thank you to my fellow board members again for entrusting me with this role of board president and for representing all of you again this coming year. It's been really an honor and a privilege this past year, and I'm looking forward to doing this again in 2023, so thank you. All right, so now we will move to the vote for vice president of the board. So can I have a nomination for vice president? Loy?
I'd like to nominate Graylin McEwen. She's been vice president this past year and has done a fantastic job, so I know she'll be continue to do a great job this upcoming year. So I nominate Graylin.
Thank you, Loy. All right, is there a second? Shweta? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, so if we can, I think the blue sheet, if you can all write down your vote, and I think we will pass it over to Bonnie. Thanks.
Okay. So first I have Elizabeth George Chinera votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Graylin McEwen votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Dana Krug votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Pooja Bansal votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Loy Maliga votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Shweta Shetty votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Robin Zovich votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. And Rachel Juliana votes for Graylin McEwen for vice president. Congratulations, Graylin McEwen, for being elected.
Congratulations, Graylin, and I concur with Loy's comments, so looking forward to working with you again this year. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so now we, as part of our reorganization, there are a number of items we need to vote on to continue the regular business of the school district. So can I have a motion for items 7 through 34, Dana and Graylin? Any questions or comments? Okay, Bonnie?
Okay. Ms. Bonsall?
Yes.
Ms. Chinera?
Yes.
Ms. Krug?
Yes.
Ms. Maliga?
Yes.
Ms. Shetty?
Yes.
Ms. Zovich?
Yes.
Ms. McEwen?
Yes.
And Ms. Juliana?
Yes. So that closes the reorganization portion of our agenda. So we now move to the regular business items in our agenda tonight. So I will turn it over to Dr. Adderhold for comments.
Good evening again, everyone. Again, just welcome to our first board meeting for 2023. This month, January, is School Board Recognition Month. As in previous school years, it's an opportunity for the school community to recognize the 9 members of the Board of Education and express our thanks and acknowledgement and gratitude for their service and contributions to the school district. On the desk, there's a gift for each of you just to thank you for your service to the community. It's a true pleasure working with each and every one of you and the dedication that you show in the preparation that you come to prepare the questions that you ask. How you work with your administration, and truly appreciate the support and the wonderful relationship that we all have. So, congratulations and thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adderhold. All right, we're now going to turn to the student representative reports. So can I have the representatives from High School South and High School North, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. We hope you all had a nice holiday break, and we are ready to cover what's happening at South.
We ended December with our Winter Spirit Week. This week was full of so much spirit, South, and holiday.
Music from our jazz band and choral programs played at lunch and throughout the halls and the offices, and our a cappella group went caroling throughout the day.
We ended the 2022 school year with side-by-side pep rallies, 9th and 10th graders in the old gym, and 11th and 12th graders in the new gym.
One of the highlights of our pep rally was the big send-off we gave to our beloved security monitor, Bert Barros. We let her know that South will always have her pride and spirit with it.
On the athletic front, the boys and girls South and North basketball teams played each other in December, and they were both great games with lots of spirit and energy in the crowd.
We have a lot to look forward to, and we are expecting big things in 2023. We have the musical, Black History Month celebrations, and upcoming music festivals. Also, this just in, South took the victory just 2 hours ago over North in their swim meet. We want to highlight the impressive victory of the girls with 117-53.
That's all for tonight. We hope you had a great New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Get home safe with the fog.
Good evening, everyone. I hope today has went well, and Happy New Year's.
To start off, on Friday, January 13th, High School North will hold its inaugural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, also known as DEI Day. DEI Day is a student workshop event at our school designated to build awareness of issues related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our goals are to foster student skills and understanding with regards to equitable practices, inspire students to think and act with greater awareness, and work to support a more just and inclusive school environment by engaging in one of 38 interactive workshops led by students and adults that day. If anyone on the board is interested in attending or would like more information, please let Dr. Dauber or Dr. Kim know. Last month, students from High School North met with Dr. Adderhold and Dr. Dauber to discuss the impact of rising costs on school clubs and the search for creative ways to support students in this manner. Students greatly appreciated Dr. Adderhold's willingness to sit down and listen to talk openly with students. We know he is a very busy person with many responsibilities, and we greatly appreciate it. Next up, we have winter sports. The WWP United Cheerleaders have qualified for the National High School Championship in February in Florida. The North-South basketball games were a great way to kick off the season, with the girls' North team winning 45-27. North female wrestlers Trisha Naka and Afua Apo both took third in their weight classes recently at the Queen of the East Wrestling Tournament. Kiran Sadaraju and Evan DeJong took second place at the George Meyer U.S. Army Wrestling Invitational, while Will Lopez and Justin Musmano both took third. Our track and field team will take part in the CVC relays on January 8th. And the spring musical is underway. This year, North will present The Little Mermaid from March 2nd to March 5th, and it looks like it'll be a great show. Now I'll hand it off to me here.
Thank you, Ria. On January 28th, the High School North is sponsoring its second annual prom shop. The prom shop is available for all high school students in West Windsor-Plainsboro who need an outfit for prom. All items have been donated and now are free of charge for the students. The High School North Parent-Teacher Student Association is sponsoring a winter clean-out this January 9th. Families can help raise funds for the class of 2023 senior celebrations by cleaning out their closets, kitchens, attics, garage, and basement. See details in the High School North/PTSA newsletter, which is emailed to family on Fridays. The more a collection weighs, the more money we raise. Also for parents, on Tuesday, January 10th, the High School North Guidance Department, in conjunction with our PTSA, will be hosting a roundtable discussion titled Atomic Habits. Discussion will center on setting goals for the new year. This meeting will take place via Zoom at 12:30 p.m. More information can be found in the High School North/PTSA newsletter as well. Finally, planning is well underway for the Washington Seminar, Disney, and this year's music tour at High School North, which will take place later in the school year. Many students are very excited about each of these, and we appreciate the school's board for bringing these trips back to our school this year. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all your time, and get home safe. Good night.
Thank you all again for the great student rep reports. We really appreciate it. And Happy New Year to all of you. Thanks. So now we're going to go to our Board of Education annual ethics training. We do this every year. And so I'm going to invite our board attorney, Jeff Kachese, up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to the newly elected board members who were sworn in tonight, and Happy New Year to everybody. I know we have to go back to December when we were talking about this, but it's not a fairy tale. You have your School Ethics Act review tonight. So let's begin. Just a reminder, this presentation does not replace individual ethics training required for all newly elected or appointed board members. Don't blame me for that. I know most of you have gone, well, not most of you, all of you have heard this before, but I will read out you because in some instances, because we're talking about the law. And I think when we're talking about the law, you need to be specific. So just keep in mind, this is all fall under 18A 1221. As you know, this is a representative form of government. It is essential that that the local Board of Education, local school administration hold respect and confidence of the people. Board members and administrators must avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates a justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. That's important because it's not just a violation of public trust, it's also the impression that may be given. So in your role as board members, you should be aware of that. Okay, as we get into the law, as we begin again, we will talk about NJAC 6A32-3.2. It requires every Board of Education to, 1, discuss the School Ethics Act and Code of Ethics for school board members at regularly scheduled public meetings each year. This is your meeting. Adopt policies and procedures for training board members in understanding the Code of Ethics, and document that each board member has received and reviewed the Code of Ethics. You will get an acknowledgement of receipt of this training to sign. All right, we'll talk just a little bit at the role of a school board member. None of you are newbies here, so at this point you should know these tenets all too well. You're the governing body of the school district. You're charged with high-level policy-making decisions. You're the only entity that can enter into contracts or other binding agreements. Your decision-making authority is limited. You cannot administer the schools. And you may not act in many situations without CSA recommendations. And we have the Code of Ethics, which is, again, 18A:12-24.1. And we're going to go through each of those with you. The first one is 24.1A, uphold all laws. This is pretty self-explanatory. Follow the law. Again, we've been through this before. I'm not going to bore you with the details of it, but just uphold all laws and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Ed and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes should be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. A reminder that we have some cases in here with some advisory opinions. Cases start with the letter C, advisory opinions start with A. You can look all of these up on the School Ethics Commission website if you want the full summary of the cases, if you're so inclined to look them up. I will leave some of these to you guys to read. We've been through them before. I will hit some highlighted ones, but this one is pretty straightforward. For example, C-5814, a board member violated the code when he attempted to issue a board employee a rice notice without following proper legal procedures of seeking board authority or consulting with the board. So everything's cannot be done by one member. It's got to be done by the board as a whole. So in doing so, that board member was not upholding the law. Just jumping through to 18A:12-241B. I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual's needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. I tell every board this as well. It goes beyond those protected categories. It goes to all of the protected categories under the New Jersey law against discrimination. I guess the DOE has not updated the law for that purpose, but you should know that. If you have questions regarding that, please feel free to discuss that with me. All right, so C-1619, board, just another example of something that would have been found to have violated Section B. Board member whose adult and financially independent child working in the district as a per diem substitute teacher violated the act when they participated in the superintendent's evaluation and voted to approve payment of merit goals. There is obviously a conflict there when you are a board member and you have a relative, and we'll discuss that a little more later, immediate family member who works in the district, voting on the superintendent's evaluation. There you can be, whether you're influenced or not, you can be perceived to be influenced, give that impression, so you cannot vote on their contract. C-4020 is another example. Board vice president did not violate the act by making a statement during a public meeting lambasting a number of district parents by name and an advocacy group that were critical against past actions of the board, even though the meeting was virtual and was beamed into homes where children could see it. Doesn't take away your rights as a board member to address those issues. C, this is one of the important ones. Not that they're all important, but this is certainly one of the important ones. This is, I will confine my board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. I deal with this in a lot of school districts with new members, and I know none of you are necessarily new here, but new board members come in and they think they're going to change everything. They think they're going to come ride in on their white horse and just change how the district operates, but your role is limited to policymaking, so you can't do that. And now look, you've probably heard this, 15 times before, but I think it's worth repeating that your role as board members is limited to policymaking. All right, C-1614, board members conducted a site visit to assess a candidate for assistant superintendent without board authority. Obviously, that's problematic because that goes beyond your role. That's not policy making. That's beyond policy making. Now assessing staff members. So that board member was actually censured for that. And just as a reminder, the School Ethics Commission has a number of different mechanisms or abilities to reprimand board members in the event there's a violation of the School Ethics Act. It could be a reprimand, it could be a suspension, it could be a censure, it could be removal. So there are those mechanisms. And again, if you have any questions about any of these, please stop and ask me. I won't read this one. C-4405, board president and vice president violated multiple provisions of the act when they accepted an invitation and met privately with the local teachers association to discuss concerns that the association had. The meeting was held without the knowledge of the other board members and without knowledge of the superintendent or the superintendent being present. That's found to have violated subsection C and D of the act. The president was suspended for 1 month and the vice president was censured. Doesn't mean you can't meet with the association as board members. You just have to have the authority to do so from the board. There was no discussion with the superintendent or the designated representative. That was the issue here. Your authority comes from the board as a whole. All right, D, no micromanaging. This kind of plays off the limited policymaking, but it's a little more detailed about micromanaging district administration. That's not your role. Again, it's policymaking. Says, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are all well run. You're not trying to be mean by saying that. We're not trying to be mean by saying that, but that's not your role. You have to know what your role is, and it's not to administer the schools. That's left for the educators, the administrators. And I'm sure you've heard that at least 22 times. C4010, this falls under no micromanaging. Board member violated the code by instructing the superintendent to allow a graduating senior to participate in graduation ceremonies when the superintendent had barred the student from participating in the ceremonies due to safety concerns. The police had reported that there were threats, that the student was the target of a shooting, and the board member was aware of the report. Still found to have violated the code. The intent may have been good, but that was administering the schools. That was micromanaging. It should have gone through the superintendent. There's an overriding theme that you will hear throughout this presentation. When you have an issue, when you have a complaint that needs to be addressed, it goes to the superintendent. It doesn't go to the principal, it doesn't go to the vice principal, assistant principal, it goes to the superintendent. C6406, board member violated the code when he unilaterally visited the school and took pictures of open windows in the middle school and items in the board office bathroom, which he then spoke to reporters about. I mean, that one's, I think, pretty obvious. I can't imagine in my wildest dreams why a board member would think that would be okay, but apparently they did, and they were reprimanded for it. (24.1)E, I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. So as a board member, you can't say that the authority is mine, right? You have to, it does not rest with me. It rests, or you as a board. It's the board, so you have to think of it as ours, right? It's not me, it's ours. And that's the distinction here. You are working as a board, and you can't do things personally for yourself. C1614, board member violated the code when they made personal promises to a candidate for assistant superintendent by advancing the possibility of his employment with the district and promising to resolve a contract issue for the district, which had the potential to compromise the board. And it's pretty self-explanatory. C6319, board member did not violate the act by negotiating and sending a proposed CSA contract to the ESC prior to full BOE review and discussion. Although the actions ostracized a minority of the board, such acts did not exceed the scope and duty of the board of a board member. I mean, that's a little different in the sense that there was a contract, proposed CSA contract, and the ECS does review that. F, no personal gain. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment or special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the school for personal gain or for the gain of friends. A great example of this is, as a board member, obviously you can't vote on somebody being hired by the board. You can't be involved with that, especially a relative, a family member. That's a big no. That would be personal gain. You have a spouse who then wants to be hired by the board. Can't do that. C3418, and this is a pretty egregious example, but it's a good example. A board member violated the act when during a traffic stop, she identified herself as a board member, stated that she hates cops because they hurt black people, called the request for her license and registration a bleeping insult, threatened to make a call right now to the council president, and after told that the ticket could not be voided, stated that I'll call the council president and your skinhead cop chief too. Township administrator sent a memo to the BOE president expressing concerns over these actions. SEC found that her near immediate self-identifying as a board member was an attempt to leverage BOE position. That board member received a 6-month suspension for that. A3614, this is an advisory opinion. Board members may endorse candidates up for election to the board if the endorsement is made as a private citizen, not as a board member or on behalf of the board. The reason I like to talk about that is because you have to know, generally speaking, when we talk about private action, you have to be very careful as a board member that you're not presenting yourself to the public as a board member on a private matter. For example, you may have private opinions. You may want to write a letter to the editor. There is case law about writing letters to the editor. You have to make it clear, and we'll talk about this with social media as well, that you are writing or speaking as a private citizen and not a board member. You have to identify yourself as a board member. You have to identify that you're not authorized by the board. So indicate in the letter you're not authorized by the board to make this statement, and that it's not written by the board. These are not the views of the board. Okay, so you have to be very clear when you're doing that. And that's, again, that's not just for letters to the editor, that's social media, it's whenever you're representing issues that are, could in any way affect the school district. A2414, conflicted board members may not participate in the board's search for a new superintendent as confidential matters pertaining to search criteria, et cetera, might be disclosed by the board members. Again, these are advisory opinions. When I say conflicted board members, usually means you have some sort of relative in the school district, so you're not involved in that part of it. And look, if you have as a board member, you may come on the board and have a spouse in the school district, or a child for that matter. You are privy to confidential information. That information, and we're going to talk about that a little later, has got to remain confidential. So the concern here is that confidential information can be used to your advantage. So you need to be very cognizant of that. As we talk about that, maintain confidentiality. This is one of the biggies. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools. As board members, you are privy, as we said, to confidential information. We have executive sessions. You're all aware of that. You are privy to information related to students and staff that the general public is not privy to. That information is to be held in trust. And in doing so, if you don't hold that information in trust, besides the detriment it can cause to the board as a whole, it's a clear violation of the act. And the SEC takes this very seriously and comes down pretty hard on folks for even accidental violations. You may not mean to. And there's a couple good examples in here. Let me just jump to them. C-1718, board member was censured for responding to and having a social media message reposted over an alleged student discipline incident of a high school student. Message identified the student's school, grade level, gender, and specific details about the incident and length of suspension imposed. C-0919, board member was reprimanded for inadvertently copying a community member on an email that was intended to go to all BOE members and the CSA, wherein discussions that were held in executive session over a staff member parent's complaint over a security issue were revealed. It wasn't intentional. They accidentally CC'd the person. It does not matter. It's still a violation of the act. It's, like I said, the SEC takes confidentiality very seriously. Even accidental disclosures are going to be a violation. C-2921, I have to go through this one because Mark did some research and actually put it in here, so it's important that I get it in. Board member violated multiple provisions of the act when at a PTA meeting they discussed the board superintendent's search and candidates for position, indicated that it was unlikely that the acting superintendent would be considered for the position, and then publicly stated at board meeting that it was important the new superintendent hold everyone accountable, and that it might have been difficult for the acting superintendent to do that if they have been selected. It violated G, E, and I. So Mark asks, I talked about it. H, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. So this is one of those where it basically says you got to consider the CSA, the superintendent's, for those of you, CSA is Chief School Administrator, their recommendations when it comes to personnel matters. C-3502, board member did not violate the code when they voted not to reappoint an employee despite the contrary recommendation of the principal and superintendent. The act does not require the board to accept all recommendations of the CSA. The BOE must, however, consider all recommendations and dismiss those that are arbitrary or capricious. So that's important. You have to consider it, but you do not have to agree with it as long as it's not arbitrary or capricious. So in other words, you have to have reasons. Now, in this case, I'm sure the superintendent was seeing red, and it might have created some bad blood with the board. But just so you know, be very careful when you should have information enough to have a basis for not accepting that recommendation. A3115, this again is an advisory opinion, held that selecting candidates for the district position and making recommendations is the role of the superintendent. Prior to the recommendation, board members have no role in selecting candidates for positions other than that of the superintendent. So, look, you could have a great candidate. I mean, you could have, someone you know, someone famous. You have Tim McGraw, for example, interview for a position. And like, I love Tim McGraw. He's great. I want to hire him. But if the superintendent doesn't recommend it, doesn't matter. The board can't, sua sponte, do it themselves. They can't then hire that person. All right, 24.1I, support district personnel. I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties. C01-18, board member violated the code when during a private conversation, during a board meeting, he asked if the CSA position opened, would that person, the current employee, be interested? Not only was there no position to fill, as there was a CSA in place, but the other individual was the superintendent's subordinate. By inquiring if interested in the boss's job, the board member undermined the CSA, thwarted the chain of command, and compromised the CSA in the proper performance of his or her duties. So that's a good example of not supporting, in this case, the superintendent, but district personnel as a whole. C-5305, board member violated the code when he sent an email to the superintendent that was also sent to the BA and all other board members that was threatening and intimidating in that it asked for the superintendent to provide an accounting of her personal leave. Obviously, there's not, well, in some districts, the relationship with some board members and superintendent is not a love story. In this case, the board member violated the code and was reprimanded for it. All right. Under case point C-8417, board member and superintendent did not violate the code when the superintendent decided to allow the parent of a special education student to observe a classroom without consulting with the classroom teacher, and the board did not violate the code by denying the grievance that was filed by the association in connection with that visit. So another example of what would not, in that case, would not be not supporting district personnel, because that was a grievance scenario. So that's entirely different. That's a contractual issue. All right. J, proceed through proper channels. We alluded to this a little bit before. I will refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer, meaning the superintendent, and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. So this is pretty straightforward. As board members, you're going to hear complaints from the community. It happens from parents, maybe students, maybe staff. Complaints have to be referred to the superintendent. It's not your job as board members to address those complaints and deal with them. Your job is to bring it to the superintendent, have the superintendent handle it. Only if it's not handled at that point, then you can address it if there's no administrative solution, as a full board, not as an individual. C-1821. Board members violated the code by sending a response email to a community member that was critical of a staff member's comments at a public board meeting and posting on their private social media account, calling the post flippant, hypocritical, inflammatory, and a source of embarrassment to the district, and promised the community member an administrative response, even though the administration was still investigating and had not yet responded to the staff member. In this case, you have a board member going to addressing a community member. And we're addressing them in public before there's an administrative solution. That's the concern here. That there was not an administrative solution. It should have gone to the superintendent. So they should not have been promising an administrative response. If you go to, for example, a vice principal, you shouldn't be doing that to try to resolve the issue. If that administrator, that vice principal, if you go to the vice principal and say, hey, I want you to resolve X, Y, and Z, that vice principals should have said no. Not their job. Go to the superintendent. C-2407, board member violated the code by not providing superintendent with letters because he did not like the superintendent's management of issues raised in those letters. Instead, the board member went to other administrators to address the issues. That board member got a 6-month suspension for that. Just keep in mind, administration of schools by the administration. All right. Everyone's favorite part, conflicts. So this really, well, we're going to talk about the ethics law versus nepotism law and the definitions, because and you can, look, I'm not going to read them to you. Under the ethics law, there's definitions for immediate family, relative, and others. As you can see, under others, an individual who meets the definition of relative under nepotism will be considered an other under the Ethics Act. Mostly applies to negotiations, collective negotiations with your local association or union. So absent another conflict, a board member who is currently or who has an immediate family member that is currently a member of any statewide public teachers union, but another school district cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations until the MOA, including salary guide and total compensation package, has been attained. Once that is done, the member can vote on the successor CNA. I get this question I've gotten from a lot of school districts, a lot of board members. I will always tell you, unless it's going to be a close vote, don't vote on it. There's no reason. But it's pretty straightforward. If you have an immediate family member, not a relative or another, immediate family member that's a member of, for example, the NJA or AFSCME or CWA, and that's also the group that represents, and only the NJA is here, so in this case, the NJEA, then you can't be involved in negotiations. Arguably until you're voting on the MOA and salary guides, and there's been an agreement on that. Even in that case, we'll talk about it. If there's a family member who is in any way, immediate family member who is in district, you got to stay out of it completely. You can't vote on the contract. So a board member with a relative who is employed by the district cannot participate in any aspect of negotiations, including the vote on a successor CNA following attainment of the MOA. It's important to know the definition of relative and what that entails. So what I always suggest, if you have someone in the district, we need to know the relationship, and then you come to us and we will give you advice as to whether you can be involved in negotiations or whether you can vote on the collective negotiation agreement. But generally speaking, in district, it's an issue. Out of district, it's a relative, and they are in this case, the NJEA. And so they work in another school district. You may be able to participate in negotiations. There's a number of factors that we'd have to consider, and mainly what are their role in that other unit in the other district. So are they on the negotiation team? Are they on the executive committee? And we'll have to do an analysis of it. So that, in that instance, come to us and we will address that. This is our little handy-dandy chart for quick reference regarding those conflicts we just talked about. And these are just a couple of issues that arise sometimes, so just to give you some ideas. In advisory opinion A2417, this is advised that the employment of a board member's sister by a substitute staffing company that had a contract with the board for substitute would not conflict the board member from negotiations or from participating in all issues concerning the district's superintendent, building principal, and budget. Now, if it had to do with the staffing company itself, maybe that's a separate issue, but for those purposes, it's not a conflict. A3014, having to do with substitutes, advised that where a board member's spouse is employed as a substitute teacher in district, the board member may not participate in any personnel matters of those in the chain of command over the board member's spouse. For obvious reasons at that point, it could be personal gain for the individual employee and obviously the board member. Non-traditional education union membership, not really an issue here because you have the NJA. I think for everybody in some school districts you will have ASME, CWA, Teamsters, but not really an issue here. So if that ever becomes an issue, we can discuss it more in depth. The doctrine of necessity. This has arisen. So when there are where so many board members have ethical conflicts that the board cannot function, then a board may use the doctrine of necessity, which will allow the board to function as if no member had a conflict. The board must pass a resolution invoking the doctrine, reasons for it, and the nature of the conflicts. The doctrine allows voting and, in limited circumstances, participation in negotiation. I don't think we have that issue here, but you should be aware of it. Always consult us before using the doctrine. As advisory opinion A2817, the School Ethics Commission does not require at least 3 board members to be on a board committee. Permissible to only have 2 members on a committee. A board cannot have a committee of 1. If there's only one non-conflicted member, then the board can invoke the doctrine of necessity in order to form a committee. Again, I don't think we have that issue here. Interview process. I will go over this, but I'll give you my opinion after. A3115, each Board of Education may decide if it wants a personnel committee. The SEC does not support board members conducting interviews for positions below superintendent. If a board forms a personnel committee, no more than 1 or 2 board members may participate. Participating members have a limited role. These are personnel decisions. I strongly discourage anybody from participating, board members from participating in interviews of anybody other than the superintendent. And that's because if you start asking questions, if you're asked a question and you start engaging somehow, that's going to open you up to an ethical violation. So we really don't, the SEC doesn't encourage it, we don't encourage it, but you should be aware of this opinion. Just following up on that, A3115, board members may not conduct the interview, but may offer observations and assessment after the fact. But again, if you're sitting in an interview, it's going to be likely a violation, so just be real careful. Final recommendations are wholly within the purview of the superintendent. Like we discussed before, you can sit in all the interviews you want. If the superintendent doesn't want to recommend it, you're not going to vote on it because it's not going to be before the board. Before a recommendation is made for hiring, board members have no role except when selecting a superintendent. Volunteering, I know this does come up a lot. There are a number of advisory opinions on this. If you have questions, certainly ask us about it, specific questions. Basically, the SEC, School Ethics Commission, is concerned with the degree of involvement with staff and students that a board member could have. They're really concerned with your directing staff or students, or the perception that you're directing staff or students. You got to think about it. You may be a parent. You may be in a school, in your mind as a parent, but a teacher is going to still view you as a board member, right? So when you are in that school volunteering, maybe it's for homecoming or something like that, and there's an advisor there, a teacher advisor. You may just be trying to help out and say, hey, grab this, can you do that? Yeah, well, that may be a directive, and that may violate the act, so just be careful. and cognizant of that. We're not saying you can't volunteer. We want people to volunteer. That is not what we're saying. It's just understand your role, what the perception may be. And if you have questions, please ask us about it. The School Ethics Commission does not view intermittent, non-executive volunteer activities to be an issue. Rather, the main concern is that a board member should not be in a consistent supervisory position or generally oversee staff or students when volunteering. So, can't do it consistently, and generally, you shouldn't oversee staff or students. Some volunteering activities that are okay, helping to construct and maintain props for the musicals and plays, loading and uploading band equipment for the marching band, serving as a team parent, including the arranging and organizing spirit days, senior celebrations, or end-of-the-year banquets, homeroom or classroom parent, homeroom parent coordinator for specific schools, coordinator of a movie night event, coordinator of field day events, PTA, PTO executive officers, including the president. But again, be cognizant of your role as a board member and what impression you may give by engaging in certain actions or conduct. All right, another advisory opinion. Board member who is employee of a busing company that contracts with the district to provide transportation to students can transport district students on a daily basis to and from school, even though the bus driver has supervisory role over students, enforces school rules, and interacts with staff and student on a daily basis. The difference, at least according to the School Ethics Commission, between the private employment and volunteering is the individual getting paid as opposed to not getting paid. It's their job. You can agree or disagree with that, but that's how the School Ethics Commission views it. All right. We talked about this a little bit already. No lone wolves. You don't want to. There's no night rangers. You don't want to go out on your own. C-2516. Lone board member with procedural concerns about a superintendent contract. The board member wanted to file a petition with the commissioner on those issues. The board attorney told the board member, hey, look, you can't without the support of the majority of the board. Board member said, shoot, I'm going to file it anyway. And after the board member filed the ethics charges were brought against the board member. And SEC found that the board member instituted, a proceeding adverse to the district. Obviously, you can't have adverse proceedings as a board member to the board, and took personal action that compromised the board. The ALJ recommended a reprimand, but the SEC modified the penalty to censure. All right. This wouldn't be a complete ethics presentation unless we talked about social media, which I can tell you is, as attorneys, the bane of our existence when it relates to this stuff. You see a lot of school ethics cases related to this. So I think it's important to kind of go through this in a little bit of detail. C-1718, board member was censured for responding to and having social media messages reposted over an alleged student discipline incident of a student. The message identified the student's school, grade level, gender, and specific details about the incident and length of suspension imposed. C-1915 and C-2015. And I'm going to tell you, before I get too far into this, there are some inconsistencies with the SEC and the OAL. So you file a School Ethics Commission complaint. School Ethics Commission makes a decision. It can get appealed to the DOE, which is going to go to the Office of Administrative Law. An administrative law judge will then make a decision. This gets complicated, which then can be reviewed by the Department of Education. C-1915 and C-2015, the SEC found 2 BOE members violated the act when they posted on Facebook that a substitute teacher, who was also running for election to the board, was unemployed and engaged in misconduct as a substitute teacher, notwithstanding the fact that the statements were not true, and actually applied to another teacher. The commission found that the board violated NJSA 18A 1224.1I and G and issued a reprimand. My advice to you, just generally speaking, is I will use the terms of one of my teachers when I was young. Sister Christian, she told me that you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. All right, C-5619 and 5719. The SEC found BOE member violated the act when he posted offensive posts on his personal Facebook page that were anti-Muslim. Although it was found that the posts were on his personal Facebook page, were not made in the capacity of a board member, and the content of the posts were personal opinions, the BOE member violated the act as it was private action that may compromise the board and undermine the public trust. Member was only censured because he had not run for re-election, therefore removal was not an option. And as I said before, you're going to see the next case, it's not consistent. But I do want you to focus on those terms, private action that may compromise the board, because that is something that, whether it's an ALJ or the SEC, can kind of seize upon, because there's the First Amendment argument here, and I don't want to get into and bore you with the details of it, but there's a First Amendment argument, but this is saying you don't have that First Amendment right because it's a private action that compromises the board. So my best advice to you, honestly, if you see a post, you don't agree with something, and you think it's inappropriate, just shake it off. Just leave a blank space there. Don't respond. All right. So, with that, we have any questions?
Any questions from board members? Okay.
Here I go. Here I go. Here I go again.
No?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kachesi. Okay. All right, so we'll now move to the first opportunity for public comments. The board invites thoughts and reactions on agenda items and items of concern from members of our community who are present. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes in accordance with Board Policy 0167. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. This public comment period shall be limited to 60 minutes. Any public comments?
Good evening. I had sent an email 2 nights ago. I am here for 2 reasons. First, obviously, is the nagging issue of the board or the superintendent not understanding margin of errors, not helping a child, not letting me as a parent meet the child's teacher, and on and on and on. A lot of atrocious things going on. And all these things that are happening, I don't know how to connect this thing with what's going on in the real world. I mean, you should be connecting it, but I'm going to connect it for you. And I'll be seeing probably 1 or 2 of you after the meeting. So the first thing is, my daughter is eligible for Math 6 HNA. If somebody has a problem understanding this, I am happy to come meet you individually, collectively. I have sent some expert analysis. I'm not getting even responses. I mean, how great are we if we don't understand margin of error? And now let's take a pivot here and jump to what's going on in the news right today. 2 things. First is New York City is getting deserted. There was a thought bubble at the beginning of the pandemic that West Windsor will gain that expensive, those high-earning people here, but it didn't happen. West Windsor is also shrinking. Second thing, which is even more dangerous, and that's why I'm recommending that the board should shrink to 5 members. In fact, in 2020 May, I said it's 3 members, but 5, maybe 5. So the advanced technologies are going to take over all education. It will not come here right away. First, it will go to the law enforcement and the judges. Low-level cases will be handled by artificial intelligence, and eventually it will come to education where high school will be redundant. Interesting developments happening. We don't really need high school. But anyway, all these things are meaningless because I don't see any vision. There is not even, you don't even have a competition here. You just walk in the park, you walk to the Board of Education, and be here for 3 years, and the right thing to do is shrink the board. I mean, I don't know to, do a panorama here. I can talk to 5 people versus 9. And my request is, what are we doing if we can't handle day-to-day problems? What are we doing if we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years? You are all sitting on the tip of a dormant volcano. And if that's what you are comfortable with, you're going to perish. Change or perish, but don't take my daughters with you. And I'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to close that public comment portion. And we do not have any committee reports since we just started the year, so I will move to the voting portion of our meeting. Can I have a motion to approve administration items 1 through 5? Dana and Liz. Any questions or comments? Okay, Bonnie?
Okay, Ms. Krug,
Yes.
Ms. Maliga,
Yes.
Ms. Shetty,
Yes.
Ms. Zovich,
Yes.
Ms. Bonsall,
Yes.
Ms. Chinera,
Yes.
Ms. McEwen,
Yes.
and Ms. Juliana.
Yes. Okay, we don't have any curriculum items tonight, so we're going to move to finance. Can I have a motion to approve finance items 1 through 6? Graylin and Shweta. Any questions or comments? Okay, Bonnie?
Okay, Ms. Shetty,
Yes.
Ms. Zovich,
Yes.
Ms. Bonsall,
Yes.
Ms. Chinera,
Yes.
Ms. Krug,
Yes.
Ms. Maliga,
Yes.
Ms. McEwen,
Yes.
and Ms. Juliana.
Yes. All right, we'll now move to personnel items 1 plus the green addendum. Can I have a motion for those items? Loy and Pooja. Any questions or comments? All right, Bonnie?
Okay, Ms. Bonsall,
Yes.
Ms. Chinera,
Yes.
Ms. Juliana,
Yes?
Ms. Krug,
Yes.
Ms. Maliga,
Yes.
Ms. Zovich,
Yes.
and Ms. McEwen.
Yes.
All right, any board liaison reports? Any new business? All right, that takes us to the second opportunity for public comments. The board invites comments from members of our community who are present. Each participant is asked to give his or her name and address prior to making a statement, which will be limited to 3 minutes in accordance with Board Policy 0167. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. This public comment period shall be limited to 15 minutes. Any comments? All right, hearing none, I will close the second opportunity for public comments. We will, any? Good, okay. So we will be recessing into closed executive session, so I will need to read this statement. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act authorizes boards of education to meet in executive session under certain circumstances, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act requires the board to adopt a resolution at a public meeting to go into private session, now therefore be it resolved by the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District Board of Education that it is necessary to meet in executive session to discuss certain items involving personnel and student matters, WWPA negotiations update, discussion of district property, appellate division number A1571-21, and HIB cases. Be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential will be made public as soon as feasible. The minutes of the executive session will not be disclosed until the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Be it further resolved that the board will not return to open session to conduct business at the conclusion of the executive session. Can I have a motion to adjourn to closed session? Robin and Liz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.